All right. Welcome. My name is Eric. You're watching the Meta here on YouTube Gaming, and today we're going to be looking at Pioneer. We've just recently had a banning that really shook up the current format, and we're going to be taking a look at some of those decks and seeing if they actually have any chance at surviving after the ban of Smuggler's Copter, Once Upon a Time, and Field of the Dead. So I've been having a lot of fun with Pioneer, and I wanted to kind of like look at some of these decks and maybe look at some of the decks that were really close to being good and seeing where those are going to end up. We're going to be using MTG Top 8 for some meta data, or whatever, if you want to call it. Not metadata. Metadata is something totally different. But we're gonna be looking at the current meta on MTG Top 8 and kind of going from there. As a lot of you may know, this coming weekend will be the start of a lot more Pioneer PPTQs, and we'll get some more events and stuff. So now's the time that we really need to start dialing in those decks and kind of going from there. The deck that I have up in front of you guys is the mono black aggro deck, and if you've been playing Pioneer, you know that this was the deck to beat. This was the big deck, and it was one of the reasons that Smuggler's Copter got beat or got banned, was because this deck was like 80% of the wins or something. Like it was ridiculous how many wins this deck put up. And it goes to show, like, if you go back and watch the old mono black devs deck that we did, months back, years back, last year. Yeah. Oh my goodness, it's been that long. But yeah, if you go back and you watch that, you could just see that the deck just like took off even back when it was in standard. It was really powerful. But we also had that red black vehicles deck that kind of overshadowed it a little bit, and you would think that red black vehicles deck would have been more powerful. But the extra additions that the mono black had from getting the extra sets were just way too strong. What's up, Skylar? How you doing, man? Skylar, you're the first here, man. I have to ask, is audio okay? You guys being drowned out by the music in the background? Just give me a quick systems check there and let me know what's going on. Other than that, though, I'm gonna start talking about some of these decks, and we're just going to get started here. So thank you all for watching, and like, subscribe, comment, let me know. I will go ahead and say, do not spam in chat. Alright, for those of you that don't know, YouTube is currently banning Google accounts that spam. So be real careful about like if you're spamming emotes or something like that. I will not be asking people to give me so many emotes and stuff like that in chat, because I don't want anyone to get banned, because that's absolutely horrible. YouTube has recently banned hundreds of thousands of accounts. People are losing memberships and things that they've paid for. It's been a really horrible experience for a lot of YouTubers, content creators, even content viewers like myself and yourself. So let's talk a little bit about this mono black aggro. All right, so let's look at what it lost. All right, first off, right off the bat, it loses Smuggler's Copter. So if you go ahead and you remove Smuggler's Copter, which it's a flying. Everybody knows Smuggler's Copter. It was a great card. It got banned in standard. It was too good in standard. It was too good in Pioneer, and not quite good enough for modern. So I don't know. I personally thought that Smuggler's Copter was perfect in Pioneer, and I didn't actually think that it was too hard of a card to beat, because Pioneer's got Fatal Push, right? Like, I mean, if you want to beat something like Smuggler's Copter, you just need to have an answer for it, and that's just not feasible if you're not in black, because you don't have lightning bolts, you don't have other things, but you could just smash it or something like that. But then you're running cards like Smash, which may not be good against other decks. So you're basically stuck. Hey, I've got to run Fatal Push in order to beat Smuggler's Copter, and that's kind of where it ended up. So we've removed Smuggler's Copter from the deck, and that's pretty much all the deck lost. So could this deck just pick up Heart of Kirin like it did in Standard, or like the Red Black Vehicles deck did in Standard, or Dwarves? Mardu Vehicles, I think, was actually the deck at the time, and then it later formed into Red Black Vehicles. But what's up? How are you? Was it Kraxos? Nah, we'll just go with that. Welcome, welcome. Good day to you too. So, like, if we look at Heart of Kirin, right? Oh, we've got to go to quantity. There we go. Get my fatal push back here. So let's say that the deck actually added Heart of Kirin to the mix, right? Now things change quite a bit, right? Because Smuggler's Copter had a crew of 1, which, you know, you could go with, was it Aether Sphere Harvester? Aether Sphere Harvester is also a crew of 1. It does hit for 3, but it costs 3 to get it on the battlefield, which is a whole turn slower. You know, it's going to clog up that 3 drop a little bit more, and one of the things about this deck was it wanted to hit, you know, a ton of stuff really early. So, you know, having to pay 3 to get your you know, vehicle online is just kind of not where the deck really wants to be. This may end up in the sideboard or something like that if this deck does survive. But Heart of Kirin is the other feasible option. Now, the deck already runs Scrap Heap Scrounger, which you know, works really well with Heart of Kirin. We've seen it in Standard. You know, you could use cards like Rankle. You could use Spawn of Mayhem to crew up the Heart of Kirin. But unfortunately, top decking something like you know, a Blood-Soaked Champion, or a Night Market Lookout, or even Knight of the Ebon Legion is not going to help you crew up that vehicle and get back in. So the deck's going to lose quite a bit against those board sweeper decks. So yeah, Crew Fix, awesome dude, long time no see. How you been? Hey, good to see you, buddy. It has been quite a while for myself. I've been wanting to stream, but had a lot going on. Didn't have my PC went in, had some CPU problems and things like that. So you know, we ended up getting those fixed. Got that new Ryzen 3800X. Man, this CPU is a beast, just an absolute beast. Where's talking about CPUs, right? Like right now, as far as CPU goes, we're pushing 6 to 15% of my CPU, and I've got a ton of things running. It's wonderful. I'm loving the new CPU. Anyway, moving on, because I could honestly praise these 3rd generation CPUs from Ryzen for days. They're wonderful. Anyway. We'll move on. So actually, I don't think that the core of this deck could actually survive the banning of Smuggler's Copter. I think that the majority of this deck is going to have to completely readjust, just because, you know, those board sweeper decks and things like that, you're just not going to be able to keep things like Blood-Soaked Champion and Night Market Lookout in the deck if you're wanting to be a Heart of Kirin deck. So, you know, some things are going to change there. So as of right now, I think that mono black aggro is either going to have to be completely redefined, or else it's completely gone from the meta, which is an absolute horrible thing. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that one. All right, moving on. The next one here, the other big deck in the format was Mono Green Devotion. Now, Mono Green Devotion's got a ton of different ways that it could be played. Some of them are running hardened scales, some of them are not running hardened scales. I've got this one pulled up. It did really well in a few of the tournaments, and kind of the backbone to the deck was allowing it to run, you know, a really low number of lands, you know, and replacing those lands with cards like Once Upon a Time. Now, we've seen Teamer Energy do this in Standard, where it was a 3-color deck that actually only ran like 21 lands, but it had Attune with Aether, and Attune with Aether would allow it to, go dig up those lands, things like that. We also seen it back when we were playing green-white walkers or green-white tokens back in the day when we had Oath of Nissa. But Oath of Nissa is also banned in Pioneer, so we're not going to be able to play that. So having these green cantrips and things. First off, like if you have been playing a green deck with Once Upon a Time and you're looking like, what am I going to replace my Once Upon a Times with? The big answer is probably going to be add a few more lands to your deck, right? Once Upon a Time, wonderful card. Probably a little bit too powerful. Being able to cantrip on, turn 0 with 0 mana, making sure that you hit that extra land drop, making sure that you have that, Land of War Elves or that Elvish Mystic, or, heaven forbid you need to, get something like a Voracious Hydra or a Walking Ballista, or just getting a land. This is really going to break the consistency of this deck, and that's probably a good thing. Personally, I think that the mono green deck was a little too consistent. I actually played this deck for a little bit. I didn't really like the way the deck played, but that's just my personal play style. I know a lot of people that just absolutely love these decks. My favorite way to play this particular deck was the Golgari Hardened Scales version of the deck, and it was also running Once Upon a Time, and using that to be able to make sure that it had that Winding Constrictor or had that Rishkar or something along those lines. Having a Hangerback Walker or a Walking Ballista to make sure that it could actually get the cards that it needed to put its little combos together and things like that. I've actually just replaced Once Upon a Time with a few lands, some Metallic Mimics here in this deck. I think that Metallic Mimic's absolutely wonderful. You just call Construct and you start casting, Walking Ballistas for free. If you have your Hardened Scales on the battlefield, then you get the extra 1/1 counter. If you've got the Winding Constrictor or multiple combinations, you get more 1/1 counters. So, really, really powerful card if you're calling constructs. Allows you to play cards like Steel Overseer, which is also a construct. Hangerback Walker is a construct. Walking Ballista is a construct. Now, the Snake's not a construct, right? But, there's a couple Snakes in this deck. So, if you get that extra, Metallic Mimic, you could even call Snake, depending on how your hand plays out. Being able to, throw down a Stone Coil Serpent or something like that. Also really good call. I like Stone Coil Serpent in this deck because I like the idea of being able to actually have a second option, not just calling construct all the time. And I'm kind of partial to the construct tribal aspect of things, as constructs are one of my favorite archetypes. I really are favorite creature types. I really like a lot of the constructs. Cards like Scrap Trawler, which is probably my favorite card of all time. I really love Scrap Trawler, and KCI was my favorite modern deck before it got banned. So yeah, we have to move on from the things we love sometime. Nissa here in this deck, still wonderful. I think that this deck's actually got a lot of merit moving forward. It didn't lose a lot by losing Once Upon a Time. Some people are running Blossoming Defense, some people are not. You've also got the Golgari aggro version of the deck, which is running Elvish Mystics, and it's running Land of War Elves. Of course, it had Once Upon a Time in it. I think that we can trade that Once Upon a Time out for something else. I actually like Rishkar in these decks, but as soon as you get into Rishkars, you really no longer need so many of the elves and things like that. So, because Rishkar will turn everything with a 1/1 counter on it into a mana dork, so you can still beat things down with it, and Hardened Scales into Winding Constrictor into a Rishkar is still a very, very broken combination. I mean, you're looking at a huge amount of power on the battlefield on turn 3, and you have a ton of mana. So I've absolutely I love this strategy. I played Hardened Scales back when it was standard, and I played a little bit of it in modern, not a whole lot, but a little bit. So, what's up, Sir Eccles? How you doing? Mr. Barry Drake, how are you, good man? Sent you an email. Hope you got it. Skylar, Jack, MTG Nexus. What's up, John? How are you? If you notice, I also did a name change here, John. Took a page from your book. Sometimes you just got to rewrite things, right? Pioneer is a format between modern and standard, basically the last 7 years worth of cards with some bannings now. How do you feel about the bannings? John from MTG Nexus here, he plays a ton of modern, or at least used to. I've kind of been out of it a little bit. How are you feeling about the burn decks in Pioneer, right? So it's Frontier 2.0. You know, in order to go out into the Frontier, you have to be a Pioneer, right? All right, I won't make any more of those jokes. We'll stop right there, right? You can build some disgusting jank with those rules. You're good. I just wanted to make sure you got it, sir, that it didn't hit the spam folder. Losing once hurts the deck, but it will live on. I think you're right. I think you're right. I think that these decks will live on. I think they've got enough power. I think the Hardened Scales deck will sit in those top 8 decks. As far as the meta is concerned, I don't think Hardened Scales is going to just lose everything. I think that Hardened Scales is going to remain part of the meta. So definitely not going to be deleting these decks from my list here, just because I think that these decks are still going to be very viable. As far as the mono green devotion deck goes, I actually think that it's still going to be viable. I don't think it's going to be the powerhouse that it was based on consistency, but I think we're still going to see these decks top 8 in events and things like that. It's probably going to be a little while before they really spring back up, because I fear that a lot of people will just jump off of the mono green wagon. But I don't expect Nykthos to go anywhere. Nykthos is a wonderful card, and huge mana engine. If you like playing those big things, then you're gonna absolutely love it. Not today. Today we're not going to be actually playing any Pioneer. We're kind of going over the meta and talking about some things, and then hopefully around this time tomorrow I'll be able to get in some actual gameplay. I've got a few hours each day around this time that I'm going to be able to put some game time in. I'm also going to be trying to do some Albion streams, and maybe even some standard on MTGA. But for right now, those are going to be the 3 games that I'm going to kind of concentrate on. Albion, Magic Online. For Magic Online, I'm going to be concentrating on Pioneer, and for your standard, it's pretty much going to be MTG Arena. Personally, I'm not a fan of MTG Arena, so I don't know if I'll be playing that a whole lot. Oh man, I've got this line right here that is annoying me. I'm gonna have to work on that. We'll do that later. For now, I hope it just doesn't bother y'all as much as it's bothering me. Next here we've got the Hour of Promise ramp decks, right? Alright, so these decks used Hour of Promise to be able to search up, Field of the Dead, or even, search up, a Westvale Abbey and use the Field of the Dead to create a bunch of zombies that you could sink into the Westvale Abbey and then flip it. And there wasn't a ton of ban, or a ton of exile, so there wasn't a lot of ways to deal with Westvale Abbey. But this entire deck was really based around the Field of the Dead decks. It ended up becoming a very, very toxic deck, right? Like, if you played anything and you started going late into the game and you didn't have some way to get those last couple points in, flying, then you were just not going to be able to beat the Field of the Dead decks. And I think that this was like the best ban that they could have made. Now, that really hurts me, because, I had these paper, I have these on Magic Arena, I had these, well, I don't have anything on MTGO. I rent, segue into use sideboard MTG. When you sign up for Mana Traders, save some money. Yeah, moving on. Links in the description. Let's move on to some coffee here and just say that this deck has been scrapped. Now, do I think that ramp decks are gone? No, I don't. I don't think that ramp decks are gone altogether. I think that they're just going to have to go back to the drawing board to see, where um, they they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. They're going to need a new huge payoff. Like if you look at this particular Field of the Dead deck, it was running Field of the Dead and Once Upon a Time, so some major nerfs here to this deck. So Hour of Promise ramp, gone. Next here we've got Gruul Aggro, which was, it's already been redefined. I'm seeing a lot of Gruul Aggro decks show up, and they're pretty decent. So, oh, I hate to do it to you guys, but we'll be right back. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. Someone at the door. Try not to be rude and just, hey man, can't talk right now, that sort of thing. But didn't take that long. All right, we're back. All right, so we were talking about the red green decks, and honestly, I think these decks are going to survive a lot. I don't think they actually needed Smuggler's Copter a ton, even though this deck has Smuggler's Copter and Once Upon a Time in it. I don't think that this deck actually loses a lot because there's a ton of really powerful 2-drops that can be added to the list to really make up for it. The deck has also got a lot going for it with Goblin Rabblemaster, along with Questing Beast. Now, Questing Beast is absolutely wonderful in everything that I have seen in Pioneer. There's a lot of really small creatures, a lot of really powerful, 2 drops, 3 drops, and stuff. But a lot of them have, really small power and toughness when they're defending. Cards like Goblin Rabblemaster aren't really good at defending against cards like Questing Beast. So I do think that Gruul survives a lot, and I think that Embercleave is going to have a lot to do with that. When you have cards like, Embercleave that you can flash in, all of a sudden make a card like Goblin Rabblemaster have double strike when you might have 4 or 5 attacking goblins on the battlefield, that's absolutely wonderful. And you can get away with casting Embercleave for next to nothing because of cards like Goblin Rabblemaster. Also giving Goblin Rabblemaster trample. Wonderful, wonderful. Do I think all red decks should run a Braid and Lava Coil? Ooh, wow. So I think you need to have an answer for artifacts. Now, I'm not going to 100% say that a Braid is that answer, because if you're in a red-black deck, I actually prefer Kolaghan's Command over a Braid. But I like having an answer to artifacts in my deck, because there's some major artifacts that you need to be able to deal with. Cards like Aetherworks Marvel, people are still trying to play around with that. That did not get banned, by the way. You can still will into an Ulamog on turn 4. You can still will into a Emrakul and cards like that on turn 4 off of an Aetherworks Marvel. And so for that reason, I think that you need to have a way to answer the Aetherworks Marvel. I think you need to have an answer for Heart of Kiran, because I think Heart of Kiran is going to become the new flying vehicle that shows up. I think you need to have answers for some of these other decks that are trying to bring things in out of the graveyard, things like that. We have the Jeskai Ascendancy deck that uses a lot of artifacts, things like that. So you are going to need some answers. Kolaghan's Command's really good. A Braid is really good. A Braid's actually really good because it's going to double and help you against a lot of those creature decks. Kolaghan's Command, if you're in more of a controlling aspect. If you're playing mono red, you're probably going to want something like Smash to Smithereens, which if I'm not mistaken, Smash to Smithereens also does it's like searing blood for an artifact. So it just depends on what you're running, but yes, I do think that you're going to need some way to deal with artifacts. As far as Lava Coil goes, you are going to need a way to deal with exiling certain permanents. Lava Coil is probably the answer for that. I don't think that Lava Coil is an overpriced card. I don't think it's a broken card. I think it will fit into Frontier at some point. If we look at the sideboard of this particular deck, it was running Lava Coils. We don't see a Braid here, but it was running Lava Coils. We do see Reclamation Sage, which Reclamation Sage may or may not be the right answer versus certain decks, just because there's certain ways that just stop. There's an enchantment deck floating around that will throw an overwhelming splendor onto the deck or onto the battlefield, and I've run into the deck with multiple people playing it, so I know that people are trying this Enchantress type thing. So yeah, it maybe you wouldn't want Reclamation Sage because it's not going to help you against something like an Overwhelming Splendor. It may just be something like Naturalize, but other decks are going to want cards like Reclamation Sage. So just have an answer for enchantments, have an answer for artifacts somewhere in your sideboard, and I think you'll be all right. As far as the red-green deck goes, I think there's a lot going on here. I've seen people trying, Legion Warboss, Goblin Rabblemaster, a lot. Let's see, what's the other one? Legion Warboss, Goblin Rabblemaster, and Krinko. I've seen people trying all of the 3-drops, just trying different versions of them. Bone Crusher Giant, if you're in the red-green versions or red-green decks, Bone Crusher Giant is absolutely wonderful. This card is showing up in almost every red deck. Just because of the sheer value you can get off of it. Damage can't be prevented this turn, which is really, really huge against those fog decks and things like that. Brontodon might be a better choice, but again, that's not going to help you against the overwhelming Splendor deck. So if that Splendor deck does show up to become, a powerhouse, which it may or may not, just depends on how it gets built. I've lost to it a few times, and then I've just crushed it quite a few times as well. So I'm not really sure if it's going to end up as being a powerful card in the format or not, or a powerful deck in the format. But if it does, then you're not going to want a creature that actually destroys your enchantments. You're going to want an actual spell. But yeah, Brontodon's probably going to be a really good choice. Brontodon's he's quite a good beater. Having that 3/4 body is also a really good defensive against some aggressive decks. So yeah, I like Brontodon. I really do like Brontodon as a card. Good old brashing Throntodon. All right. Anyway, moving on here. Next, we've got the Simic aggro deck. Now, this deck did have a lot of consistency that was based off of having Once Upon a Time in the deck. Now, I've seen so many different versions of this deck. Some of them ran Once Upon a Time. Some of them did not run Once Upon a Time. So, it's really, really good. Is Fog that evident? Oh, yes. You know Nexus of Fate is legal, right? Yeah, Nexus of Fate's a legal card in Pioneer. Didn't get banned. Yeah. Wilderness Reclamation, it's a thing. So, yeah. Yeah, Simic Nexus is the main deck that runs it. Yeah, absolutely. So, the more powerful that deck gets, the more likely you're going to want a card that says damage can't be prevented this turn. Wild Slash, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but if you got a 4-power creature on the battlefield, they can't fog you. Alright, you just slash any target, so I'll slash you. Right, and then now you can't fog, so fog away, buddy. Burn that card, which is pretty cool. So yeah, this deck's got a lot of merit to fight against those Nexus decks. Let's actually jump down here and look at Nexus Fog, right? Since that's currently what we're talking about. The Nexus decks, they get to run actual fog, right? Like, I know we call cards like Haze of Pollen, we call it a fog and everything, but they get to run 1 mana, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn, right? So, yeah. What are my thoughts on going big in Gruul with things like Glorybringer? That could work. Glorybringer seems to be, kind of the top end to Pioneer, right? A lot of people are not wanting to play, more than, 5 drops. Kalitas or Cletus, Hillbilly Vampire Extraordinaire. Am I aware of Infinite Turns? Yeah. Yeah, I might have seen it once or twice. But yeah, Fog's one of the ways they get to the big mana they need to get into Nexus of Fate, right? And then at that point, once they can see, 10, 11, 12 cards per turn, then, at that point, they're guaranteed to hit that Nexus. I've seen these decks built quite a few different ways. Personally, I like the ones that have little Nissa in it, the green blue X Nissa. I think that those are my favorite fog decks. I pulled this one off of MTG Top 8, which I pulled it before the ban, or from the events that were before the ban. And if you notice, guys, it didn't lose anything. All right, like, it didn't lose anything. It didn't have Field of the Dead in it. It didn't have, Smuggler's Copter. It didn't have Once Upon a Time. This deck lost nothing, right? So yeah, I think that Nexus Fate is going to be the new problem card, and hopefully they'll just ban it, right? I hate playing against this strategy. nothing infuriates me more than just watching my opponent go play solo for a while. So yeah, I and sometimes you just have to let them play it out for 3 or 4 turns in hopes that they whiff on a Nexus of Fate, that all of their Nexus of Fates ended up at the bottom of the deck somehow. And honestly, I I have no desire to play against this deck. I really don't. Yeah, you can throw it on the Reddit. The Reddit is still there. I'll not be changing the Reddit. The sideboard MTG subreddit will still be there. You can go over, throw the deck on there, and get some help from the community. I'll try to get more active on the Reddit. Although I've never really been super active over on the Reddit, mainly letting you guys post your decks and talk about things amongst yourself there. More or less, I've just made sure that toxicity stayed away from the Reddit. So we're just saying something when it comes to Reddit. Well, the side would rather have Veil over Display. Well, Veil's banned, and Veil is banned in Pioneer, so you don't actually get a chance to play Veil, and it doesn't go back as far as Autumn's Veil, right? So we can't get Autumn's Veil. Veil of Summer's ban, and Display of Dominance is the best option we have. Cindervines is awesome against Nexus. Yes, it is. Cindervines is very awesome. Cindervines is also another way to destroy target artifact or enchantment, and you'll deal 2 damage, right? So Cindervines is really good. Yeah. Reddit says your account was hacked. Yeah, I have nothing to do with that. I cannot help you there, Jack. As far as I know, though, you can just, if you're like everyone else, you probably got 4 or 5 emails and just sign up with a new one. So, all right, we're gonna move on from Nexus. I think most of you know how Nexus works. The deck didn't lose anything. If anything, it'll now redefine itself and prepare for the new meta and be stronger than ever, which is an absolute nightmare because Dig Through Time's a real card, right? And every time they get to Nexus of Fate, they get to, throw more cards into the graveyard. You'll notice that the deck uses cards like Censor and Hieroglyphic Illumination, which are great cycling cards that you can easily and quickly fill up your graveyard with so that you can cast those Dig Through Times. When you have cards like Wilderness Reclamation, it is actually no problem to just full pay for your Dig Through Time, which will get you them into your Nexus of Fate most of the time. Going 7 cards deep is huge. So yeah, I think that the Nexus of Fate is going to be a big deal. So next here we're going to move to Ensoul Artifact. All right, running with Scissors now. Orphan Blood, how you doing? Running with Scissors was a great deck. I played this in Standard back when it was in Standard. It did pick up a little bit. It's hard to feel good about the cards that it picked up, but they work, right? And when I talk about that, this is a Pioneer deck running Ginger Brute, all right? Like, you almost laugh when turn 1 somebody goes Ginger Brute. And then you're like, uh-oh, that's about to be a 5/5, and I'm about to get hurt, right? It throws Ensoul Artifact on Darksteel Citadel, which is an indestructible 5/5 that you've got to keep throwing chump blockers in front of. So, Ensoul Artifact. Now, this is one of those decks that can easily be defeated if they're not ensouling their Darksteel Citadel. Now, if they're ensouling Darksteel Citadel, you're not going to have a lot of ways to interact with it because you can't even do something like Field of Ruin it because it's indestructible. So there's not a lot going on that will save you from an ensoul on Darksteel Citadel other than just throwing your Llanowar in front of it and stopping 5 damage from hitting you in the face. So where's the link to Reddit? Oh goodness. I don't think the bot's still active. The bot might be active. You can try !Reddit. It might pop up. But I will go back after the fact and make sure that there's a link to the Reddit in the description box. Anyway, this deck did have Smuggler's Copter. Do I think this deck needed Smuggler's Copter to be able to win the game? No, not really. I really don't. The deck's super fast, and the reason we called it running with scissors, though, was because, you know, first off, in Soul Artifacts, big giant pair of scissors, and you know what your mom always say, right? Don't run with scissors, you'll fall and you'll stab yourself. And that's exactly what this deck can do. It can easily just trip and you've lost, right? You didn't hit an end soul. Well, if you didn't hit an end soul, then your big creatures are cards like Ornithopter and Bomat Courier and Ginger Brute beat you down with a Hope of Gyrepeer. Maybe we'll get enough money and Stone Cold Stone Coil Serpent. That's Stone Cold Serpent, right? Stone Cold Serpent Steve Austin right there, boys. I actually like this card. Anyway, a card that we didn't have last time that Insult Artifact was around was Skilled Animator. So now we have more than one way to be able to turn these creatures into 5/5s. The problem is or turn these artifacts into 5/5s. The problem is Skilled Animator is really easy to disrupt, and then again, Insult Artifact's really easy to disrupt if you're trying to put it on something like a Ginger Brute, because you don't have any way to really protect that Ginger Brute. Smuggler's Copter was in the deck. I don't think that this is necessary at all for these decks to survive. In fact, this may actually free up some space because people aren't, you know, trying to run Smuggler's Copter. Smuggler's Copter was such a good card that people just kind of had to run it. Like if you could activate it at all, you put it in your deck because it's just a wonderful card on many levels. So people were making room for it where it didn't even have to be in decks. And I actually think that this deck will get stronger without Smuggler's Copter. I know that sounds like really weird, but I don't think that this deck needed Smuggler's Copter to be good. Yes, Soul Blast is a lot of fun. You're right. Cards like Shrapnel Blast are just broken, right? Deals 5 damage to any target for 2 mana. And what did I lose for that? I sacked a Ornithopter, or heaven forbid, I sacked the Darksteel Citadel that just put you at 5, right? Because I've been hitting you with it for the last couple turns. So I mean, there's definitely some play there. What this deck would really like instead of something like Smuggler's Copter would be like Mox Opal, although that's not legal, and Mox Amber won't do the job. So yeah. Sweet, found the Reddit in a roundabout way. One of the best roundabout ways is just type in Sideboard MTG in the search bar there on Reddit. All right. So yeah, if you guys want to go over and give some feedback on Big Gruel by Jack, check it out. We're gonna move to the other Is It deck that I'm actually fond of, and I think that this deck's going to pick up some steam. This is the Elder Deep Fiend Is It Emerge deck. Now, for those of you that don't remember Elder Deep Fiend, this is a toxic card right here, man. Alright, so you're sitting there. You just did your turn 3. You're getting ready to set up. You pass turn. They flash in a Brazen Borrower at the end of your turn, and you never play again. Now you get your turn, and you play a land. But you had these plans. You're like, okay, next turn I'm going to hit my 4th land drop. I'm going to drop this card, whatever it may be. And then we're going to do this, and this. And they pass back to you and say, wait, at the beginning of your upkeep, we're going to sacrifice this Brazen Borrower. I'm going to flash in Elder Deep Fiend. We're going to tap down your 1 creature and your 3 lands. Okay, you can start your turn now. I have a 5/6 on the battlefield. Well, crap. Now if I don't have a 1-drop in hand, I can't do anything, right? And then, so you play your 1-drop, and you're like, all right, next turn I can deal with that Elder Deep Fiend. We'll get back into this, right? And then they pass back to you, and they go, wait, at the beginning of your upkeep, I'm going to sack this Elder Deep Fiend, and for 2 blue mana, I'm going to play another Elder Deep Fiend. and tap down all 4 of your lands, because now I'm not worried about whatever you played on 1, 2, 3, or turns 1, 2, or 3 of the game, because my 5, 6s are just way too big, right? And then if that wasn't bad enough, they also have cards like Flame Wake Phoenix that flying, haste, and if you have if you're ferocious, which Elder Deep Fiend makes you ferocious, you can get everything back. Oh, by the way, Kozilek's Return, also activated by Elder Deep Fiend, right? So this deck's got a lot going on. The fact that it's red means that you can get away with running some Wild Slashes if the Nexus Fog deck becomes a thing. You can get away with it has Bone Crusher in it already, so like there's a lot going on in this deck. Even if you don't hit your Elder Deep Fiends, you still have a red-blue pile deck right here that could just beat you down naturally, right? The other side of Kozilek's Return, if you're not looking at casting, the big Eldrazi's and getting the, from the graveyard aspect of Kozilek's Return, it is still Flame Sweep. All right, this is still 2 damage to each creature at instant speed for 1 red and 2 colorless. So yeah, I mean, this deck's got a lot going on for it. In case y'all don't remember, Chandra, amazing card, even though it was nerfed. For those of you that don't remember, or you have this in paper and you're reading it, like, this used to do damage to the like to planeswalkers, right? Like, you used to be able to redirect that 2